have to produce that.
I think that what I've seen is every time people attack Joe Biden, it backfires. It backfires. Castro went after Biden and disappeared. Kamala went after Biden and had to get out the race, and luckily she's back in. There's something about Joe Biden. He has some Teflon, and so I just don't think. Biden more person.
The old Reagan line, there you go again. And you can, Joe Biden can use that against Donald Trump. If he continues to attack him, Joe Biden can smile at him and say, okay, that's a lie, and go on. I mean, I am sure, actually, that they have responses ready-made for him to just flick something back at the president and turn and take it back to him.
The bottom line is Republicans believe that Joe Biden has lost more than just a step. And they believe that an hour and a half of a smackdown will become evident. That's what I think.
But you need more. You need to say about that is that's a gamble that they're willing to take.
You also need more than Republicans.
That's the gamble. I think they're in a position that they have to take.
Right? You need more than Republicans. You have to persuade others. And the fact is, if you look at this polling and you ask who has the mental acuity to be president, they're pretty even in this regard. So they've got a lot of ground to make up here.
If you're playing at the base and that's your argument, fine, but not voters that you might need to persuade.
I think you do have people who are in the Democratic coalition right now who they want to vote because they want to vote against Donald Trump, but they also need some reassurance tonight. It's not just Republicans who need that reassurance. I think there's some Democrats who need that reassurance too, that he's tough enough, that he's strong enough. But I think that he's going to be up to it. If you remember when he was in that big old mix of all the other Democrats, he kind of looking lost and cut himself off. Once it got down to just him and Bernie, he was able to hang. And I don't think it's just because Bernie didn't go after him personally. I think it's because I think Joe has a lot to say and wants to say it and will say it tonight.
I mean, don't forget, one thing I was thinking of is looking back at the debates in 2016. The old Trump thing, what have I got to lose? 2016, not as much as he has to lose now. There's a lot to lose now, and he's going to be tough.
How do you see the debate starting just in terms of topics? I mean, what's the first question from
Isn't it hard?
Is it COVID? Is it taxes?
Isn't it hard for the tax thing not to be
I think Chris
high up in this deal?
I as a occasional moderator, there's a couple different ways to go about it. Taxes would be the obvious one.
Yeah, I think the courts also those are the two most recent news would be the court nomination and taxes. You would probably lead with what's
but
one of those.
Sometimes if it's something so obvious, although the taxes, for instance, you might go COVID with there's the Trump family entering.
Yeah, the only reason I think Wallace doesn't lead with tax because it's clearly leading with just an antagonistic topic.
Right.
And I think coming out of the box, that just didn't work. I just think we'll look that way. I think we'll make Chris look like he's taking sides.
Also, you can make the argument as a moderator, he doesn't need to do one necessarily introducing it first because Joe Biden's going to mention it no matter
I think
what.
something that's a lot more neutral as a starter. That way you're not setting the table, picking one side to the point as opposed to.
You're probably looking at whether Biden can execute
I asked Mom if I watched this debate thing, and she said, ask that. Can I say switch Janet?
What?
The bad case switched Janice, and then they tried to make it think like they switched Michael. So I'm going to be watching this thing, if that's all right with you.
Here's the point again.
I mean, the problem is, guys, you never actually care about what's happening on the screen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're not staying up
Is
late.
this all filming?
What? I was gonna do some chatting.
This is gonna be posted on YouTube.
Yeah.
Can I be in it? Me too. Just pop in from the side, No, guys, you can't. But it's on YouTube.
If they want to watch, they could watch.
You from doing your work, they can't do
they're not interested in watching. They're interested in staying up late, which is different. I'm already live right now. This is actually going out in the universe, and I don't think they're actually interested in watching the things.
Yay! This is totally like going in the universe, dude. Going in the universe! Daddy, can we just say one more thing? Can we say one more thing? Let's say one more thing. Hi, peeps. What's up? This is all going to the universe. I'm your bro last year, and this is Simone.
Simone, you need to go.
Hopefully you'll see Mochin Spark sometime in this video. I wonder who's watching this live. Live! No, I'm staying here.
Bye.
No, I'm staying here. That's not fair.
Questions raised about.
It's not my bedtime yet.
You can read upstairs, but please.
It's not my bedtime yet.
So you might get a situation.
Fine.
Proud of their families, proud of themselves, trying to navigate it.
Well, too bad you didn't get the best person in the world on YouTube.
I think that maybe sort of we're talking about Biden getting hit.
Hi, everybody.
But
I think my children might actually go to bed, so that might allow me to talk. What I'm looking for tonight, right now, I don't think this is going to move the needle. Debates don't usually move the needle. But I am curious to what extent Joe Biden here is speaking to the middle of the country. He's been definitely running more of a broad unifying campaign since the convention, less base-oriented. But in this debate setting, he's going to be asked direct questions about policy positions. Does he stick to the kind of answers he gave in the primary when it comes to policy positions, or is he going to try to go as light on specifics as possible? Speak broadly, speak in big unifying themes, keep the focus on differentiating on character, and try to win big. I think Biden wants to win big. I think he wants to flip as many states as possible. I think he wants a big electoral college margin. I think he wants to try to rattle the Republican Party so he can have a better shot at bipartisan governance. That is a little bit belied by his travel schedule. He hasn't really been going to the reach states in his own travels, although Jill Biden was in Nebraska over the weekend. And they are advertising in places like Georgia and Arizona, although not as robustly as some other states. But that's what I'm mostly curious about. I mean, the only way this becomes a big game change is if Biden is utterly terrible and validates the narrative that Trump has been making of him, that he's simply out to lunch. You and I probably believe that's not what's going to happen. Biden is not experiencing cognitive decline. He's been functioning normally in the CNN town hall, for example, and he's been preparing for this, for days on end. And Biden is generally pretty good at debates. So, barring something calamitous like that, I don't think you're going to see a game change. I don't see what Trump can do to have a game change. I mean, Trump's the one who needs the game change right now. He is behind by 6-7 points. The debate is one of the few opportunities to have a big dramatic moment, but what can he say that he hasn't said for the last 3.5 years? I mean, he could have a slightly different tone. He could try to have a new tone, be more like in the ABC town hall. He was, less bombastic than he is at some other appearances. But even if he does that here, does that make that much of a difference after he's been in our TV sets and our computer screens for 3.5 years? That's the problem with being an incumbent. People's opinions are pretty fixed on you at that point. So that's why we've been at this for nearly a year, and we've had a pandemic, we had an impeachment, a pandemic, an economic collapse. We have sexual assault charges. We've had civil rights protests. We've had murders at civil rights protests. We've had many gaffes. We've had many scandals, and that trial heat graph is very, very stable over the course of the last 12 months. So that's why I don't expect this to change things dramatically, with the lone exception of something utterly disastrous on the part of Joe Biden. And
President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden taking the stage, going head-to-head in their first presidential debate at this.
I am curious to see how Chris Wallace handles things. I know some folks are not huge on any Fox News personality being part of this, but I think Chris Wallace has earned his stripes the way he's handled Trump in the past. I don't expect he will do something as dramatic here, but I think he'll be a straight shooter. Here we go.
Good evening from the Health Education Campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed that candidates.
One thing I'm a little surprised by, I always thought Trump would debate. I never argued Trump would skip the debates. I never thought Biden would skip the debates. I thought there'd be a little bit more drama around Trump during the debate. I thought I'd do a little bit of, will he or won't he? But I think Trump, at the end of the day, can't walk away from big ratings, and this is going to probably be big ratings. I think this is Joe Biden's 30th debate, presidential or vice presidential, general election or primary. I believe only Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton have done more than him, and I believe they're both at 38.
President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on the court.
This, of course, would be a fine answer if Republicans treated Obama in the same way. You should be president for the full 4 years, not 3.5 years. Problem is that they shifted the rules 4 years ago.
And therefore, we have the right to choose her, and very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they're trying to do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. And looking forward to this, Mr. President. The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that He ran on that, and he had been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I'm not opposed to the justice, because she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went to the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing is on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be held pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man did. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
It's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialists. You're going to
This
socialists.
is, we're now into,
Trump was actually having a decent point there about the president having the power for 4 years. To go and accuse Biden of supporting single payer and socialism was probably not a good diversion for him.
And we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won.
I do wish Biden would
wanted to allow people to have
hit them harder on violating their own principle from 4 years ago.
They will. You're my proposal.
But
Not what you said, and it's not what the party is saying.
That is simply
Party doesn't
I'm
say
sure
that.
they've been told that the Affordable Care Act is the meteor target here.
Right now, I am
And they're going to dominate you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And if you were here, it would be 200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban.
I was not expecting a numbers debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but I assume the Trump people want to make Biden tongue-tied on numbers and chop up the clips afterwards.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court.
Interesting to hear Biden bring up abortion.
And so the election,
He has not leaned in on abortion to date. He's mostly talking about ACA.
because
Why is it on the ballot?
it's on the ballot in the
I don't
court.
think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, we
And
can
you
just
don't know her view on Roe v. Wade.
I
You
don't
her
know.
view.
well, all right, let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on healthcare, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
all right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask that question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I
I'll
got
give you
rid
an
of the
opportunity.
individual
I'm gonna
mandate.
give you an
Excuse me,
opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive plan.
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of
I didn't ask you,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was
debating
the
him,
worst
not
part of
me. Let me
Obamacare.
ask my
Well,
question.
I'll ask Joe.
I
The
know.
individual mandate was the most unpopular
Mr.
aspect of
Mr.
Obamacare. I
President,
got rid of it.
I'd like
And
you
we will
Mr.
protect people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting healthcare. All of the things that we've done.
I mean, Trump doesn't have a lot of options here, but I'm very dubious that he can say things are going to go down, things are going to get better. He didn't do anything in his 8 years. I'm doing it now. You've been there for 3.5 years. You know, when you're an incumbent, you have to show you've done it. You can't say you're going to do it.
You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare. And
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
will. I can ask you the question. And it will
Not what the
end.
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you agreed with Bernie Sanders, his far left, on the manifesto, we call it. And that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you
I'm
saying
not
you
going
didn't
to listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days
I'll tell
early. You would have lost every
All he
primary
knows how to
on
do is
Super Tuesday. You got
look.
very lucky.
Here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make sure because here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything.
Trump's trying very hard obviously to get under Biden's skin, but Biden seems to be holding it together. But he is forcing Biden to throw some elbows at Bernie. And certainly Trump would be happy if that depressed any vote on the left flank.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders in the
The whole
manifesto.
idea. There is no manifesto. Number
Please let
one.
him speak, Mr.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
See, there it is.
Agreed with
There it
Bernie
is.
Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
Absolutely.
folks, do you have any idea what this clown's
Socialized,
doing?
they call it
You have any clue?
socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I'll
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care. Because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give
Number
you better
three.
health care at a much lower price
But-
because
and by the way, he
Obamacare
doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed
He
it.
has never
I've
offered
already
a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
and you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time.
And it's too
Let the president, go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better. And I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well? or badly. If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive, premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand this, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk.
He has no plan for healthcare. He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising the healthcare plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right, I have one final question for you.
Probably one of Biden's best answers so far. You know, Biden is always often a little meandering, and Trump obviously is doing everything in his power to throw him off his game, which is what Trump is best at. But whilst keeping Trump largely contained there and letting Biden actually get a thought out and distilling it well, that's what Biden needs to do as much as possible.
So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell
Hi, Laz.
American people tonight
Also,
whether or not
can I
you
give
will
a shout out
support
to
either
Julia?
ending the
I
filibuster?
don't know if Julia's watching, but you can.
Mom helped her get on. I think she got
Oh,
to
okay.
get a shout out.
Okay, sure.
Can they hear me?
Well, everyone who's watching can hear you.
All right, whoever's watching this, hi Julia. Julia, are you watching this? Well, I'm on.
Okay, don't take forever.
Oh wait, she just said hi, Bill.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Julia. Hope you have a good time watching the show.
Okay.
Let's go make a night house. That's what the reason I'm down.
I think
This is so unbelievable.
we have ended
Hey, Julia.
this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
Yeah, the people understand you. 47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully
I mean,
serious subject.
Trump's bullying has
Let's try to be serious.
thrown almost pretty much everyone who's debated him off their game. From Rubio, Cruz, Hillary. He doesn't let you do what you want to do. That is the value of his cantankerousness. But Biden did a pretty decent job at shaking his head and smiling it away, considering how tough the whole terrain is.
So far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools that cost a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to
You
you,
have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000. And one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
Just 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something.
In 1992, George H.W. Bush ran on "Annoy the Media, Re-elect George Bush," and it did not get him over the hump.
I know how to get the job.
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was
A
no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
Far
point.
less
There was no
lethal
recession.
disease.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy. He shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them yet, the nurse holding the phone up so you could in fact say goodbye?
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far
That is-
more people.
And
You would have been.
And by the way,
enslaved.
his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held him. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just the mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine. What are you? I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
We
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
Johnson, Pfizer.
And
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen,
and
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future because you both have touched on two of the questions.
I mean, the best Trump can do here is to step on Biden's answers. When Biden gets the full 2 minutes, he's hitting his message points, and he has the edge on trust on COVID already. So Trump relying on the China stuff, the H1N1 stuff, that's not going to be enough to flip those numbers.
Dr. Slowey, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call
So
it
you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what
that
I call
the head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slowey?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available.
As he said, it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after
It's
that.
generally available. not-
Well, when it delivered.
I have to say, I'm very surprised that the Trump campaign didn't complain about Chris Wallace being the moderator after what he put Trump through. But perhaps it's because Trump is happy to argue with moderators and make that into part of his message.
By the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
I was
same man.
said sarcastically,
That was
you
it.
know that.
I
I would have said
And
sarcastically.
so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious.
I don't know if saying I told you to inject bleach sarcastically is the best offense there.
Done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out. If we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
soon.
want to pick up on this question though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't,
Everybody knows.
Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be
Yes.
suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by the way,
These are the kinds of questions that are not Chris Wallace at his finest, where they're just they feel more like trolling than serious, legitimate points of inquiry. But so that's why I may not give Chris Wallace an A+ in this debate. I don't think it makes him unworthy of the job.
He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people die. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
And it's
We're going
going
to
up
get to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going
I'm sure
forward.
that Trump team
Whichever of you ends up-
saw the clip of Joe in 1987 when Biden got very angry at his academic record being examined and said, I bet I have a higher IQ than you. They clearly wanted to make Biden lose his cool at that point, but Biden seems to be well prepared for these lines of attack.
Money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to
Tell
provide
that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to
See,
Nancy
you know,
Pelosi.
And
And Schumer.
by the way,
Brian Schumer.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits in his golf course and, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably
All right,
play
think
more than
about
I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants
I don't know if
to
I've seen Joe Biden on a golf course, actually.
And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election. On November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly.
I mean, I understand Trump bullying is his go-to, and I do think it makes it hard for any competitor to stay on his or her feet, as it has been in the past. But I also think Trump's in trouble because he is seen as a source of chaos and instability and combativeness. And I mean, it's very hard for him to do, obviously, in a 5-week span, but I do think he needs to give the middle of the country a sense that he would be a stabilizing force and to be the expected bully here. I don't think it's going to achieve for him what he needs to achieve.
I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite. No serious.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
I want to ask you, we got
said
a
very strongly,
minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said, I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
people with.
Nobody shows up to his rally.
In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But you're not
you've done a
worried
great
about
job as a president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
We
the
have a lot of
disease?
people.
I'm not sure how many Americans are going to stick through the end of this debate, considering the tenor of it. But to have this much time spent on COVID is not what Trump needs, because nothing about this issue is going to work in his favor.
24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000
All right,
people
you wanna-
at these rallies.
Just
Yes.
quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible in the way in which he has handled the social distancing, the people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
Ben, he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy? Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Of course, Biden didn't have the crowds in the primary, and he still won the race.
From the shutdown in the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there.
Now we're shifting to the economy, but the economy is also COVID related. So we're going to probably have another 15 minutes or so on this, getting you close to 10 o'clock. And it's all subject matter that's not helpful to Trump.
To the American people in terms of the economy, President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look at these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back.
I remember following the thread in this answer. Biden didn't want to close it down before, and now he wants to close it all down.
Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question.
The thing is, Trump has largely gotten his way on this. Most of the country has opened up. It's just you can't have a fully functioning economy when the plague is still running rampant.
Another billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait now, sir. I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives.
I guess it's probably not the first in American history. I imagine there was fewer under Hoover. So I'm sure there'll be some fact check crowing about that.
The idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why are schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, you're going to get to...
Trump's going to have another crack to try to undermine Biden's coalition again, because I know there's a race segment around the corner. But and you could hear from the earlier part of the debate, you know, Trump wants to drive a wedge between Biden and the left. And I'm sure he wants to drive a wedge between Biden and African Americans when he gets the opportunity. But as long as we're talking about COVID, and as long as we're talking about the economy, he doesn't have that opening.
It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And the people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know
We're going to get back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President.
This is why it was so hard for Obama in 2012 to run for re-election, because the economy was marginally better than when he came in, but it still wasn't great. And trying to argue to folks that you're doing better than you think you're doing, you know, is ripe for an attack. We're not even really improving right now. We're still in a serious pickle. And to have Trump say to working class America, "You're doing well," obviously people in his own ideological base will accept it, but I'm quite sure there are people in the middle that won't be impressed with that assurance.
I paid 27 I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And we have I built a
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 700.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you. Chris, let me just say something.
This is where Wallace is at his best, because, you know, in all due respect to the deceased, a Jim Lehrer wouldn't do that. And a lot of moderators would feel they have to take a very passive role. But I think it was the correct choice when you're dealing with a bully like Trump to have a moderator who's not going to put up with that and force him to answer the question.
It's like a hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue, you get a massive, which by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened, but.
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who in fact need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you
Why
are
didn't
president.
you do it over
Because
the
you
last
are
25
president
years?
screwing things up.
You were a senator. and
You're
by
the
the way,
worst
you were a
president
vice-
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just say, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing,
Okay.
including
Gentlemen.
fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care
We're
of your
talking,
vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be
Yes.
elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than it is in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it
Billions of
before
dollars.
you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was
Right.
your
I got
tax
it.
proposal.
I got it done, and you know what
And
happened?
you got it done.
Our economy boomed
And
like it's never
the
boomed.
economy
Well,
is what?
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue.
Would like to see Biden challenge Wallace's premise there. That was an example of Wallace's loaded questioning, calling it big government and big spending as an assertion.
Turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also
This is not a point that Biden is probably going to want to make, but it was the slowest recovery since 29 because they're both financial crashes, and financial crashes have slow recoveries. That is part of it. It's a different kind of circumstance than a typical recession like 1992.
And you have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
He blew
booming.
it. He
It
blew it.
wasn't booming. It was the weakest
Well, sir,
recovery
is it
since
fair to, is
1929.
it fair to say he blew it when, in
When
fact,
COVID hit.
when there was record low unemployment
Yeah.
before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse
Number
me,
one.
Chris. Wait,
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would
This
take a
guy.
miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of
not
my
agree with that.
standard fare.
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry.
Let him make.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan and went to Ohio.
They're not.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate your
Mexico.
lunch.
All right, gentlemen,
10%. China ate your lunch.
Trump can't actually say that the trade deficit narrowed with China. So
Billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. That's what he could deserve. What did you do with Burisma?
See,
$183,000.
doesn't like the way the exchange was going, bringing Hunter Biden out of nowhere, all trying to get under Biden's skin and turn the tables around.
Mr. Vice
We got $3.5 million.
It is not true.
Really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue, let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000?
I mean, this is definitely the biggest, food fight of a presidential debate we've ever had, and it prevents Biden from getting as many clean shots as he might otherwise if Trump was adhering to norms. But I don't think he provides Trump with the game changer. Biden's not doing anything that is, high on the gaffe scale. I mean, even Biden, if he had a major gaffe, that's sort of baked in with Biden. Nothing is happening here that is going to allow Trump to say Biden is suffering dementia.
I did my job and I did it very well. I did it honorably. I'll give you the list of the people who testified. Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't.
Well, here's
with you.
Wait a minute, you get the final word.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
And let me just say,
No, Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family
already
lost
broke.
a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such a.
Mr.
That's such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost.
This is not
Mr.
about
President,
my family or his family. It's about your family.
They didn't
American
$3.5
people. He
million.
doesn't. That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
And you
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take that.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest. I
He stood
get it.
up.
No,
He stood up.
the answer to
And
the
he
question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
That is
You know what, you're
absolutely not
Stop.
true.
doing it.
You're gonna
Not
have,
true.
gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal. We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment,
I feel very sorry for the upcoming moderators, but perhaps Wallace going first here, setting a standard that, hey, you gotta assert yourself. Perhaps the future moderators will feel they have, a permission structure to do that.
fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
And him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting.
Oh, that's all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the races with those people, close your eyes. Remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is
Now, second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, we talked about helping
Biden getting to go first here is helpful because in all likelihood, Trump is going to use dog whistles right now. So to lay down that predicate ahead of time is of some benefit.
By the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
I
racism?
did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You called them super predators, and you've called them worse than that because you look back at your testimony over the years, you called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words.
It's always been the struggle for Trump. He wants to hit Biden from the left on the crime bill, and then he wants to establish himself as the law and order candidate. It's hard to do both.
We would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities are just about.
He supports the 94 crime bill, but he doesn't believe in law and order.
Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. but there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it, but we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
Right.
That is peaceful protest. When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
you
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful
protest. No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with this.
That's where Biden has been walking a very fine line on race issues and police issues his entire career. And to be able to say there is systemic injustice, that's the kind of thing that not every Democrat could say without sparking white backlash. Biden feels comfortable saying that, but also make sure he pairs it with positive words about most police, precisely so he doesn't spark that white backlash. It's a lot more elegant than what Trump was trying to do, which is he's trying to walk his own fine line, but it's a lot more erratic.
In our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
Racial sensitivity training.
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we would pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
That's pretty blunt on Biden's part.
There is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grow up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at.
It's very hard to hurt Biden amongst African Americans with the super predator charge when Biden is talking the language of racial unity, and Trump has to then say the Obama-Biden administration made things worse. I mean, that's a line that works with some white Americans, or at least it did 4 years ago. But it's not a message that's going to help undermine Biden with his base support.
And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch.
Much more.
All right, we're down. Mr. President, you're going to Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
We have trouble with Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer, particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact, there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know
He
suburbs.
would not.
So much
I was
better.
raised,
Go ahead, wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though.
And 4 years ago, Trump wasn't talking about the suburbs, he was talking about coal miners. And he's recognized that as he's hemorrhaged support amongst wealthier Republicans, suburban Republicans, he's trying to play the race card there. But it is a clear departure from the more consistent focus he had on the working class that he had 4 years ago.
Is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law.
Right. It's only 10 minutes ago where he said he was for the 94 crime bill, and he was too authoritarian. And now he wants to defund the police. It just doesn't square.
We have time. We don't have time to do anything.
Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. The Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leaders, excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Here's the
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to get the killer of a young man in the middle of the street. They shot him. And for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland didn't do anything. And I sent in the U.S. Marshals and they took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all
I
about.
don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the point. The point is that that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly at every single solitary time.
And to end this, button up this.
And that's kind of line that lands because I mean, this is the reason why he is behind. I think there is a general exasperation with the constant feeding of chaos, and there's nothing Trump can do to suddenly stop doing that.
The National Guard would be over, there'd be no problem. But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
to do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Go
would
ahead,
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right
So
wing.
what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
What would you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
wing.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right wing problem. This is a left wing. This is a left wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not malicious. That's what his
It's an idea.
FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're
Everybody-
moving on to the next.
But a bad is over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth is that's a bad
Can I
idea.
tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you gotta be
Biden
careful
records.
with them. They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks
The Antifa overthrow.
it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me,
I mean, this is a freebie question for Trump.
That's done what I've
And he has to talk about the impeachment hoax. I mean, you could just tick off supposed policy successes.
Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few.
I don't believe he's getting to 300. He's a little over 200 right now. And forgive me if I don't have the numbers right at my fingertips, but last I looked, he had about 40 judges in the pipeline. I mean, and not all those were, close to getting a floor vote. I don't even know if there are enough vacancies at this point for him to get to 300. Obama and George Bush, they both got around 330, if I remember correctly. So, Supreme Court aside, I mean, it's not a record for 2 terms. I don't think he's going to beat Jimmy Carter for 1 term. Carter had a lot in his term. They're all lower court. And so, assuming if Trump does lose, I know he's not going to get more than Obama and Bush got, or Clinton for that matter. Clinton got more than both Bush and Obama on lower court judges.
The fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got
And-
$3 million.
And by the way,
Mr.
my
President,
son,
wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed that both sides.
Biden's starting a little angry right there, but he pulled it together.
Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule? Okay, sir?
never keeps the word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you have back 30 seconds?
Yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have got much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't
Jill.
stay divided. We can't be this way.
I think my
And
plug is
speaking
in
of my
the
son,
bag
way
there.
you
Can you
talk
get it
about
for
the
me?
Military, where you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a
Can you
loser.
plug this in the
He
kitchen?
was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. And I
Okay.
resent
You talking
like
about Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm talking about my son going 5 years.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other
true.
places.
He,
My son,
my son,
and he didn't have a
my
job.
son, a lot of people you know at home had a drug problem. Overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But why was he
Proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right,
dollars?
he wasn't given $10 million. That is totally totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make
I know,
a
but when
judgment call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay,
from
right.
the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about-
Moscow.
That is
about
not true.
Gentlemen,
That report is totally
Why did he-
discredited.
I
Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report was written for political reasons.
you know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay.
Climate change.
Fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change? And what will you do in
I
the next
think-
4 years to
I think this is supposed to be till 10:30.
Crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have.
And you know, so much has been such a food fight. I mean, I know I'm repeating myself here, but I think a food fight debate is not a game-changing moment. So as messy as it's been at times, I don't think Trump's landed the kind of punch that he needed to land at this point if you want to have a real turnaround.
Are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need.
I don't think
in addition to everything else,
he's going to have his game-changing moment in the climate change portion of the evening.
Dead trees that are years old and they're like tinder and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have
believe?
guts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting.
believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
the
think a
planet?
lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They call forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests.
They have a carbon cap in the European Union as well.
He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of
But
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car. And you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they simply
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talked about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy.
Interesting that Chris Wallace asked him a question that was a fairly accurate encapsulation of Biden's climate plan. He didn't ask him a Green New Deal question. He didn't try to tag him. I mean, maybe that's coming. And certainly I would expect Trump to try to associate him with AOC and Green New Deal at this point.
Run on their electric vehicles, making sure that we can do that. We're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that
this is the other main area where Trump would presumably want to try to drive a wedge between Biden and the left.
Weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion. Say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have serious.
It's very unusual to see a blunt proposal to give money to another country. Not that I'm saying it's the wrong position or anything, but that is the kind of thing that swing voters might bristle at. And the Democrats often, dance around those sorts of proposals.
This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is the guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
Talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion. That's more money that our country could make in 100
Simply
years if we
not the case.
All right, let me, because I actually, wait a minute, sir, I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that. The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what they did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal:
You make up.
we are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
If Biden can flip Iowa by talking about global warming after they got hit with a very serious natural disaster, that would be a notable development.
He made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
Green New Deal is not my plan.
He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
What
not
he did
true.
is he said he called the military stupid bastards.
I
He
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid
Please,
bastards. He
sir,
said it.
stop.
I would never
I
say
would
that.
Play it.
Stop.
Play it.
Go ahead.
You're
Mr.
on
Vice
tape.
President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental change will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. You're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
Do you
You're going to
support
build.
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New
You
Deal.
don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just asked the radical left.
I support.
There's Trump trying to drive that wedge.
That I put forward. The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks? Because it'll not only be the election day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after election day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote.
So you're not saying Biden dissuade
Make sure they can
mail voting.
The polls are open on time.
He's not entertaining
Stay open until
the notion that the mail is going to be thwarted by the Trump administration.
To scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, they'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? You're going to get 4 more years of these lies.
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition.
So we're going to end on just colossal conspiracy theory instead of reassurance that our electoral system is legitimate.
They send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months, because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
All run by
2 minutes
Democrats.
is 2 minutes.
All run by
You're-
Democrats. It's
President Trump,
It's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think, I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it? There are millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
that's
I
okay,
know
or
your
you go and
complaint. I'm
vote.
asking you about the fact that millions of people.
You go and
have received-
vote. You go and
No,
vote,
but what
like
I'm
they
saying is, what are you gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
Okay.
This is not going
Vice
to
President
end
Biden.
well.
5 states had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in until the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes. because
You're
of the
wrong.
outcome.
You're
No,
wrong.
I want to continue with you on
I
this.
love that.
Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes his statement
No,
like that.
excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable number, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I am concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me,
No,
you
I have
have
a final-
80 million
Gentlemen,
ballots.
I have a final
Senate
question.
is swamping the system. You know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already
All right,
been
so now-
fraud.
Mail service delivers
Gentlemen,
185
final
million
question
pieces of
is,
mail a
in
day.
in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
Yes.
flatten them until election day.
My personal opinion is that if polls hold and it's a 7-point race, it's not going to be close enough to have this go to the courts. I mean, Trump could litigate all day long, but it has to actually be close for some ballots lost here and there, human error, things aren't filled out right. It's not going to come down to that if this is a 7-point race.
And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia. Bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that mean
from a common sense,
does that mean
I'll
you're
tell
going to
you what
tell your
it means.
people to take the
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're
And what
sending
are you
out
gonna do?
80
And
million
what will you
ballots.
do
They're
about that?
not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two,
Okay.
they cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
You think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
It's
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's
I
race.
asked you had an opportunity to
Look at Carolyn
respond.
Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome, and I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest
Okay,
ballot count.
Gentlemen, will you say that's the end of this? This is the end of this debate.
Honest ballot count.
We're
And I
going to
think
leave
he
it
does
there.
too.
To be continued as in more debates.
Well,
as we go on.
that was
President Trump, Vice
about as much of a cluster as I think we should have expected. But I'll stick with what I said. Over the course of the night, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be people that say, Biden was stammering at times, or uh, you know, use the wrong words, the wrong numbers at places, and things like that. But in the Biden scheme of things, these are all pretty minor transgressions, things I think we've come to expect from Biden. And as much as Trump bullied, interjected, attacked the moderator, and all that kind of thing, it weighs Biden down, so he doesn't have as many clean shots. But I don't think it gives Trump the game changer. I don't think there was a moment that makes the average voter, a base voter, a voter who hasn't been paying attention but just had to tune in for the first time. Nothing out of this is going to be, I wouldn't think, becomes a news story that dominates discussion and reframes the race. And when you're behind by 7 points, last I checked, it was 6 points in Real Clear Politics, with 7 points in 538. As I've said repeatedly, there's never been an elected incumbent that's come back from that far behind. That was true in the summer. It's even more true when you're 5 weeks away. Truman, who was an unelected incumbent, was 6 points behind by the end of September. And so that's your greatest comeback story. And this is of course at a time when polling was a lot less frequent, a lot more crude. And Truman did something to change the game. Truman went on just an enormous whistle stop tour, I mean, it boggles the mind how many states he went to, how many people he interacted with, and he prosecuted a case for himself that hadn't been widely heard yet. So there was a difference. Something different occurred to help him make up that ground. When you're an elected incumbent who's been underwater literally his entire presidency in the polls. And most people's minds are made up about you because they've seen you in office all this time. It's hard to envision what it's going to take to turn things around, which is why you see Trump at the very end, because the last resort is to cast doubt on the entire process and claim that the numbers aren't real as they're coming in on election night. Or claim the numbers that come in after election night as mail ballots get counted, claim that those numbers aren't real. But if things remain as stable as they have been, and this is truly a 6-7 point race, and Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are 5 points or greater as they are last I checked. Now those, if I remember correctly, I believe those are states where the mail vote gets counted slower. Florida, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, those are states where they can start tallying the early ballot early. That leads to they can't release the numbers, but they can tally. And so the numbers will come in quicker in those states on election night. Generally those states have been narrower than Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, at least most recently. I mean, it's been a little fluid. Arizona had been a little bit higher. Florida had been higher. Now they're a little narrower. If Biden has a solid lead in those states, then it's truly going to be over quickly, well understood. Trump can whine and complain, but it's going to be widely accepted that Biden's won this. So you didn't see Biden, as I said at the front end of this, would Biden have to feel compelled to say things that were leaning harder towards the base and risk alienating the swing, or would he lean too much to the swing and alienate the base? If anything, a little bit more of the latter. He certainly didn't say anything. His strategy continues to be appeal to the broad middle. He's not doubling down on the base for the most part. Perhaps calling Trump a racist and flat out helps with the base. But by and large, he's trying to be broadly appealing. And probably the only strategically sensible thing I believe that Trump did was try to exploit that and try to harm Biden with the base. I just think it's hard to do when you're doing so many other things that are driving the left wing towards Biden. It's a little easier to play that double prong game when it's under the radar. It's in social media and Russian trolls and the like. You're doing it overtly. It's harder to make it all fit. So that's my sense of it. Obviously, polls can surprise jackass pundits like myself, and things can shift when you don't see it coming. But that's my gut sense of things. I appreciate all of you who have stuck around with me during this YouTube chat, and hope to do more of these sorts of things in the future. Take care, everybody.